This is the Board of Sewer and Water Commissioners meeting for Thursday, October 10th. First item of business is the abatements. They've been all signed. And the next item of business, we have an appointment with the Abraham Group, who's been involved with the rate study update. So Matthew, you're on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I'd like to provide one handout.
Sure.
I have another one if it's not enough there.
Okay.
There are. Are we speaking into this?
Yeah.
Okay.
As long as it's near you.
Okay. So Matt Abrahams from the Abrahams Group here to provide an update on our water rate study analysis so far for the board. We have done some work. We've done a decent amount of work, and what I can definitively update you on tonight is where we are with the financial analysis, and I can update you also on where we are with the data analysis. It's just that we're not as far along as we were hoping to be at this point, and I can explain why. So the one handout we have is an analysis on the financial piece so far, our baseline analysis. It's also up on the screen. I wanted to provide this in handout format because I find it easier to go, if I'm going to talk about it line by line, I think it's probably easier for people to have it in their hand. But we can also look up on the screen. I also wanted to have it on the screen tonight because I wanted to show you some of the flexibility of the file that we've created so far and how different assumptions present different results. And we'll talk about that in a few moments. So I think it makes sense to go through this hopefully at a somewhat high level. And then once we're done with the financial piece, we can talk quickly about where we are with the data analysis, which is really the billing data analysis. And then I guess we can take any questions at that point. Or we can take questions throughout, but that would be the end of what I plan on speaking about tonight.
Okay.
So what we have here for you is our baseline analysis. What we mean by baseline is basically this is what we think it looks like if there aren't any rate or fee related changes. Basically the do nothing scenario, as we like to call it. So we've worked with town staff to gather a lot of information and worked with them to help mold our assumptions and make sure that everyone was pretty comfortable with them. We've worked with Bernie, we've worked with the town accountant, we've worked with the town treasurer, we've worked with the ladies in the water department on a few different things as well. And it all has kind of led to this, what you have in your hand. So I plan on going through it line by line. I'll go through it relatively quickly. I'd like to start with the expenditures section, which is starting kind of in the middle of the page where it says expenditures and other uses. We have the salary lines there. The salary line is there. There are 3 columns of actual results that we've received. So that's what the first 3 columns represent. The next column represents the budgeted numbers for FY20. The next column represents the projected numbers for FY20, which may be different from the budgeted numbers. They are on the revenue side, they're not on the expenditure side. And then on for the next 4 fiscal years, FY21 through 24, this is where our projections come in based on certain assumptions, and we'll talk about that as well. So on the salaries line, if you look at the comment to the far right, it tells you what these numbers represent. So we took the FY20 budgeted number and we increased it 2.5% going out to the right. So FY21 is increased 2.5% over FY20. FY22 is increased 2.5% over FY20 over 21. I think I said that right. And so on and so forth. The expenses line, similar setup. The budget numbers from the FY20 budget, and we increased that one by 3% going outward to the right. The next several lines, we took these lines from some reports we received from the town. Those have to do with town meeting votes, but we are basically ignoring anything related to that in our analysis because ultimately we want our analysis to impact where we're projecting retained earnings. And those expenses will not have any impact on retained earnings because they've already been allocated or set aside for those projects. So essentially, even though we have them here, we aren't including any of the expenses. But I do have a comment here that it would impact retained earnings if there end up being turnbacks, which means that there's a certain amount of money set aside for it. If those projects, if all of that money is not spent on those projects, then that essentially would flow back to retained earnings, and it's a boon for retained earnings. The next line item is existing long-term debt service. These are numbers received directly from the town treasurer's debt schedule. So FY20 is there, FY21 is from that, 22, 23, 24. And you can see, I'll get it up on the screen as well, that the number has a significant drop off in FY24. It goes from 1.8 million to 1.1 million.
Yeah, we completed paying off the Willis treatment plant and some of the other activities we did that were, it's a 20-year bond. So it's a substantial thing that, as you said,
Yep.
dropping off.
Okay. The next line is not anything that's on the town's books currently. These are our projections for debt service based on the capital plan. And we are going to talk about that a little bit more. So don't get too hung up on those numbers. I'll show you where they came from in a moment. The next row is short-term debt service also related to the capital plan. Sometimes we carry numbers there. We worked with the town treasurer on this one and understood that she didn't anticipate any short-term borrowings related to the capital plan, so we basically zeroed those out. For the capital outlay row is also related to the capital plan, except for FY20. Those numbers have already been voted. Those items have already been voted. But 21 and on is based on what we think what capital items might be eligible for being funded out of retained earnings. That's what that line represents, FY21 through 24, and I will show that to you in one moment. That's a reason why I wanted to put this up on the screen. So before I do that, let's talk quickly about revenues. We essentially took the line items that are in the town's reports. If the town staff were to do a printout of what the financials look like out of Munis, these are the rows that we would see on the revenue side. So we basically just use the same ones. So with revenues, projecting revenues is difficult. We don't necessarily know what the future may look like on some of those things. So we like to rely on historical data as much as possible for that. So we have actuals for 17, 18, and 19. And in basically every case that we've listed here, we've taken an average of those 3 years and we've used those numbers going out to the right. So for example, on the penalties and interest line, we took an average of 17, 18, and 19, which is that 30,603 number. And we've carried it for each of the years in our analysis. And the same basically is true except for one row here. And that is the new services entrance fees line. The numbers have been pretty high in the recent past. And from working with Bernie, we thought it didn't make sense to use the 3-year average because we thought that might be overstating what the town anticipates will be coming in for entry fees in the near future. So we thought a number of about $500,000 per year made sense for that. And that's why we're not using an average there. And for the user charges line, which is the most difficult one to predict in an analysis like this, because you don't know how usage patterns may necessarily go. A lot of it has to do with weather, whether it's a dry summer versus a wet summer. For example, this past year, as has been discussed in this room, water usage is down a decent amount because there was a really wet spring compared to years in the recent past. So we were comfortable using the 3-year average there because that number for FY20 represents a number slightly less than FY19. So for now, we're just carrying that number in our analysis. until we complete the billing analysis, because then we may come up with a different number, but for now, that's what we have in there.
So the budgeted figure, was that aberration?
Well, the budgeted figure, I haven't talked to anyone from town staff about that number and the reasons behind it. I wouldn't say necessarily it's an aberration, but it did feel a little high to me just based on the recent past and also knowing that usage is down a little bit.
Those numbers are based on you total the expenses, which primarily is the salaries and expense, indirect costs, and long-term debt, and then we get an estimate of what we think of the entrance fees, subtract that off, and then we get an estimate as to how much water we think we're going to sell, and it just becomes arithmetic, and what was left after taking all the expenses, adding an estimate of the entrance fees, that's the number you come up with, and then you come up with the actual rates based on how much water do we think we'll sell, and just do the arithmetic, and that tells us that we needed a 1.99% increase across the board. So that's where how that number is arrived at.
Okay. So that's it for the revenue section, the expenditure section. Down at the bottom of the sheet, we have a retained earnings summary table. The first number that you see there, the $2.776 million number, is the most recent certification of retained earnings. And then based on our analysis, our projections, we are projecting what we think the retained earnings balance might look like going out to the right. So you can see that there are numbers coming out of that amount. If there's a projected deficit in a given year, that comes out. If they're based on the capital plan, if we're assuming certain funding out of retained earnings, then that's coming out as well. So based on a lot of assumptions, and there are a lot of assumptions here, including mostly having to do with the capital plan, which we'll talk about a little bit more in a moment, you can see that retained earnings projects to dwindle over the next few years, and we project that it'll run out sometime between FY22 and FY23 based on what we have here. But that also includes the full funding of the capital plan based on certain assumptions. And we know that that may not come true over time, but we have that currently in our analysis as a complete funding of the capital plan that we were given by the water department. So I know there's a lot here, and I just kind of flew through it a little bit. Are there any questions or comments on the sheet you have in front of you?
Yeah, I do.
Pat?
If you look at the indirect costs,
Yes.
it is 4.5%
Yes.
yearly.
Yes.
Now, the town budget goes up 2.5.
Yep.
Why is there a difference?
Yep. So a good question. And actually,
Could you use the mic, please?
use the mic?
Yeah.
Okay. Good question. Bernie and I actually had a conversation about this today. So originally in our analysis, we had it as a 2% increase. We changed it to 4.5% today, and that's without having a discussion with the town accountant about it because she was not available today. The reason why is because if you look at the actuals for indirect costs on the sheet, you can see it here for 17, 18, 19, 20. If you take the difference between those years, from 17 to 18 it went up 10%. From 18 to 19 it went up 4%. And from 19 to 20 it went up 5%. So based on that, we thought that 2% was probably on the low side, and we bumped it up a little bit just for now. Now this is where we are in the analysis right now. We will have a conversation with the town accountant to see if she agrees with that, and if not, then we will bump it back down.
I still don't understand why it's a difference, though. If the budget for the town is 2.5, why is the indirect cost increasing more than 2.5? It should be in sync, I would think.
I don't know the answer to
I
that.
think, and maybe Josette, you might be able to answer, being on the FinCom. The 2.5 would be what the 2.5, Proposition 2.5 would allow, but there's new growth that adds so that the budget can, the overall town budget can increase more. Is that correct?
Yes, but that goes by the assessor's office.
Yeah, but I mean, that's why the budget, the entire town budget can grow without overrides. And of course, if there were overrides, that would, yeah.
But it's
So-
still 2.5%.
Plus new growth.
Even though it grows, it's still 2.5%.
No, the way I understand it is, if there was no new development, yes, 2.5% is the limit. But if you build a new house or an apartment building or whatever, that's new growth that adds on top of the 2.5%.
It's a lag effect.
Yeah.
The pumpkin keeps getting bigger and you're squeezing 2.5%, but we're the pumpkin, we're in the next iteration.
Okay,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
okay. Any other questions at this point?
I'm okay right now.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Keep going?
Now, yeah, just, you said that this is where you stand now, and you mentioned you have to talk to the town accountant. Do we have an idea of when you'll feel comfortable that this is, complete as in terms of this part of the project?
The financial analysis?
Right.
Probably as soon as we get the blessing from the town accountant,
Oh,
which
okay.
may be in the next week or so.
Okay. All right.
I have sent this off to her, but she wasn't available, I think, today and maybe yesterday too, so.
I know she was tied up with the town meeting warrant yesterday, as I wanted.
Yeah, she was off-site for some
Yeah.
class today, I believe.
Okay.
So it'll be in the near future. I'm pretty comfortable with where we are with this right now. But it would be nice to have a conversation with her just to see if she agrees with what we've presented here.
Okay.
Or to see if she's comfortable with it, I should say. So I'd like to show you just a little bit more of what we have here. This is the only printout I gave you because I thought it made more sense to show on the screen some of the things that we've done here. So this tab right here, and I might make it larger so everyone can see, is essentially the capital plan that was provided by the water department. So out here to the left, we have a number for whatever the project is or the item is, and the name of the project or the item, and then the cost, right here. And there are 26 of them. 26 items in this list for a total cost of about $24 million. And based on the timing, we have that here. So there's some for FY21, some for 22, some for 23. You can see them as you go downward. We built this tab in a very flexible manner, so based on certain assumptions that are selected here, it'll either include or it won't include certain expenditures. So we have everything set to yes right now. If you were to set this to no, for example, it would essentially just take out those dollar amounts that we have for that plan. So it's a flexible way of having, being able to include certain things, not include certain things, and see how it flows to ultimately to this sheet.
Do you have the ability to say not, that we want to postpone it for a year or two? Because oftentimes the plan, the deeper in you get it, it starts to be like a laundry list of things that need to be done.
Yep.
And, a lot of the things, you think you're going to do it in fiscal year, 23.
So
When you get there, you figure, oh, we're still 2 years away or something.
yeah, so let's take a look at that right now. So this row right here, cleaning of raw water lines, is currently ticketed for FY21. And because we have it set as retained earnings at the moment, that's basically saying, well, we're going to spend that amount in that year,
Right.
the 422,500.
That's a good example because it is one of those that did
Okay.
move back.
So what year would you like?
Move it, yeah, just that, yeah, I just like to see how it works, that's all.
And because I got to update this. There's a button up here. So if you update that, it's going to take a second, but it'll move it over to FY23.
Oh, okay.
these numbers up here are changing, if you watch it.
While it's doing that, is this something that, when you're completed, that the town will get ownership of and we can use it?
If you would like, that's fine, yep.
Okay.
So you can see that the numbers here in the FY23 column now,
Mm-hmm.
based on that. And up here, I know there's a lot of data here, and plus I made it larger, so it's kind of hard to see everything. But we have a breakdown of what's retained earnings and what's borrowing. And if you go out to the right, it's by year. So right now in FY21, we have that much for retained earnings. We have that much for FY22, and we have a borrowing amount of that based on a debt schedule. So you can see here for row 1, we currently have that as a borrowing of level debt, because that's what the treasurer has told me she typically does when she borrows. 20-year term based on certain assumptions that she provided, 4%. And if you go out here, you'll see that we've already projected debt for that project based on those terms. And then we sum it up here at the top. That's your total new debt for FY22, 23, 24. Going out to the right, you can see the number gets pretty big once you get pretty far out there. FY25 is where it really ramps up.
So that's only new debt. So as
This
you've
is-
already noted, in FY '24, we have a significant drop.
Yep. So you can see now that the new debt line that we talked about
Mhm.
earlier, these numbers are reflective of what's in here.
Okay.
So if we look at 22, we have the 227,750. 23, we have the 649,150, and 24, we have the 654,445. So if you actually add up the 654,445 to the 1.1 that's already on the books, you're less than 1.8, which is the amount that was on the books the prior year. So
Okay.
the total debt in FY24, even with these assumptions, is still well less than the 23 amount. But then when you get up to FY25, it ramps up another $500,000 or so, based on these assumptions. So the reason why I want to show you this is because the flexibility, if we were to say no to a lot of these items, it would take these numbers out of the equation, which we could easily do. Based on my assumptions, which is essentially anything less than $750,000 we have as retained earnings. If for some reason that wasn't the right way to do it, we can make a change and we could see the numbers update as well. But for now, this is what we have for the capital plan. And I just wanted everyone to be aware that we can change this and make it look however you want and see what the numbers look like if we ever get to that point, if you
Mhm.
wanted to see that. Okay? And then the one other thing I wanted to show you with this file at this time is kind of a first shot at maybe impact of rate changes. At least the ability to play around with rate increases. So what I've done here is I've created these columns over here represent the baseline, what you're looking at here. Okay? In table format and in graphical format. So this row has the surplus or deficit in a given year. This row has the projected retained earnings. This row has the retained earnings as the percent of budget. We like to include these percentages because it's a good measure of how healthy the fund is. We like to support that this number is somewhere between 10 and 25%, ideally. That means you have healthy reserves for the budget that you have. And then I just threw in this number as a target, 15%. It could be anything. It could be 20, it could be 10, but I have 15 for now. So if you look at the graph, that orange line represents the target, and the blue represents retained earnings. Okay? So I've created a new tab, which I haven't shown you. It's this one right here, but it's essentially the same number as the baseline. And if you were to look at rate changes, you can see how it updates on the fly. So let's just say 10% each year for now. By the end of FY '24, it's gone back up, but it's also dwindled about down to where the target is, based on a lot of assumptions of what these numbers currently look like, but that's what it would look like. So this represents what I call straight line rate increases, which basically means that if you were to look at a rate increase, it would be the same across the board, because we haven't yet done the analysis on what you could do with different tiers if you wanted to, but we plan on doing that, and we've started the process of getting there. But for now, I at least wanted to show you that we had something like this if you wanted to look at it that way. So that's essentially what I wanted to show you with where we are with the financial analysis and a way to look at rates. An update on the billing stuff is this. When we met with you last time, which was prior to being hired by the town, we talked about how we had the ability to work with Munis reports and extract billing data out of the system. Well, I worked with Judy in the water department and learned that the report that we had planned on using was not possible for the town of Walpole. And the reason why was because the data set in the system is just too large. The history of accounts and their bills goes back, I don't know the exact number, but it's probably like 20 or 25 years in Munis. And considering how many accounts there are, which I think is in the 8,000 range, the way that this report runs, it's an inefficient way that it runs. It essentially, you search for everything before you can actually target a specific date or dates. And therefore, when we ran it that one time, it was trying to pull every single bit of data before we were allowed to take a subset of it before just the range we were interested in of dates. We let it run overnight one night and it still didn't work. So we had to come up with a different way. And the way that we decided to attack that problem was to take a look at the commitments themselves. We were able to go into Munis and print out a PDF of each commitment over the last year or so. But because of the way that the water department does commitments, there are a lot of them. There are over 100 of them. And
Well, no.
I'm sure you know. And I have a way of doing it, but getting PDF into Excel and then formatting it the way I want to, it's a tedious process. But I'm at the point now where I'm starting to get it going a little bit. So I think I've loaded 5 in so far, and I'm starting to move on it. So I'm hopeful that I can have a full billing file done in the next week and a half or something like that, and therefore have some actual numbers related to tiers and some things to look at the next time I meet with you. But I just wanted to let you know that that's the reason why I'm not further along at this point on that.
So when would you expect to be able to meet with us again and, have a show where you actually have the data and being able to change the blocks number or what the ranges are and rates and so forth?
Yep.
When do you expect you'll be able to?
So Bernie and I talked about it already today, and he told me about, I believe, is it the next meeting? 28th. So I think I'm tentatively on that agenda to speak to you that night about that.
He's on, okay.
Good.
I don't know if it's tentative. It might be more than tentative.
If Mary knows about it, you're on.
So I'm planning on having something for you to look at that evening.
Okay. So other than just, at this point, you're just still trying to collect the data so that you can then start to say, all right, here's my suggestions. One of the concerns that we have, because we're running short on revenue because we're not pumping as much water, which means we're not selling as much due to the weather and all, we probably will have to have a mid-year rate adjustment, and the sooner you can do it, the less impact it has if you're trying to squeeze it in the last quarter.
Yep.
You understand if
Yep.
you can do it half year,
Yep.
it's better than at the last quarter, and certainly it would be better if we knew it right now.
Right.
But
Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, I mean, there's that, I mean, that's an important issue that we want to kind of get an answer to and come up with a resolution for. And then I just want to make sure that when you come back, I'm more interested, I mean, the financial analysis is very interesting and informative and instructive, but the billing analysis is kind of where I'm sort of identified, and we all have a few issues, and I just want to make sure that when you come back, that you at least have the beginnings of some answers to some of those. And just the issue of the multi-units, I think you were here for the,
Yeah.
one of the residents, so you're aware of that, and you're aware that we're looking for a resolution. It is a problem, we want to kind of incorporate that into our solutions as part of your work. So you're aware of that, right?
Can you remind me?
Yeah,
Just
so the multi-units is, because we have the block rate billing system, multi-unit, 8-unit apartments are being penalized at the top tier, you know, for most of their water use, even though they're not watering outside or using excessive water. Essentially, there's 1 meter flowing in 8 apartments, so all being, you know.
Yeah, you run into the case where
Right, so-
an apartment building, 10
Yeah.
So we'd like
units converted to condo, and they still only have, you know, 1 meter coming in, and how to address
It's
that.
just not fair to
Yeah.
a select group of ratepayers, and we'd like to make it more fair.
So if they had their own meter, they would stay in a lower tier. Is that one way to look at it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I don't know if that's the solution, I don't know.
No, I'm just
Yeah.
saying, but that's the idea.
That's true, yeah.
Yeah.
It's an answer.
Yeah, it is an answer. So that's just one, and I'm gonna ask you
Get you
next
next
now,
time.
but just wanted to remind you
Yeah.
about that. Obviously, the block rate, it's okay if I go down my list?
You can go, and Pat will be next.
Okay. The block rate is new to us, it's 2018, so it's relatively untested, and we'd like to, I mean, I think that'll be part of your analysis, obviously, but are the rates, and are the block amounts, you know, 1,500 cubic feet, is that the right amount for the bottom tier, and so on? I mean, we just want to make sure where we are is where we intended to be,
Yep.
after having a little bit of data to actually help explain it. So that's another question about the block rates. I had a question, about the INI fees. We have an issue I feel like we have an issue with how much we charge INI and how much.
Well, that's the only thing that's related to sewer, and
Yeah.
we're
Oh,
only
okay.
doing water, so.
Oh, that's true.
That would
Okay.
be a separate thing.
So that would be a separate question.
Anything
All right.
else?
Let me make sure before I move on. No, that's all for now.
Pat?
Yes, Matthew, you obviously have to reach a certain goal with the rates, right? We need a certain amount of revenue to run the water department.
We need 313,000, this number right here, that's
That's correct.
right.
Now, Matthew, there's probably more than one way to get to that number. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Are you going to show us different scenarios of how to get to that number?
sure.
You are, okay. That's what I was curious about. And, you know, you're not tied to block rates. I mean, that's not a mandate, is it, from this board? We must have block rates. If you can come up with something more innovative, you know, that's what we're paying the big bucks for, Matthew, right?
Something we're
Okay.
Okay.
I just didn't want to see something come before us that was almost cast in stone. I'd like to see alternatives.
Right, and I think that's one of the reasons why I want to come back in a few weeks, because we can have, not necessarily a working session, but have a conversation about what the data looks like, and then maybe as a group come up with some paths on where to go from there.
Okay, anything else, Pat?
That's it, thank you.
Good. John? This John?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay,
I'm good.
all right.
Moving right along
I'm also good. I'll be interested,
tonight.
particularly in the data collection, because for the information that we use to, I had to go through the very same thing with those commitment sheets, and knowing how cumbersome it is, and I had the spreadsheet so you could change blocks and rates to come up with the right number, so I'd be interested to see in particular that, as well as very interested on that, so.
Okay.
Bernie or Scott, do you have any, no?
I've talked to Matthew about also looking at your commercial rates as well.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay,
Thank you.
anything else?
That's all I was planning on sharing with you
Okay.
tonight, so,
Sounds good.
Well, we'll be looking forward to seeing you at our next meeting on the 28th.
yeah, me as well.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Moving
Yeah.
right along.
Yeah, yeah, we're going to do Article 12. All right, our next item up is, we have to come up with a final position on Article 12 and Article 18 for the fall town meeting. The FinCom, as well as the Board of Selectmen and that eventually town meeting, are looking for our input on that. Article 12 is the article that proposing to acquire a parcel of land, it's landlocked at the end of Darwin Lane. So we've had some discussions. Jim Johnson had set up a meeting that Glenn and I attended. We talked with Darren and Breyer. We talked about land swaps. That really didn't go anywhere, and it was sort of cumbersome to begin with, and so in the end, it was the best approach would be a outright purchase. There's been a little bit of going back and forth. At this point, we're quite a bit away apart from a financial standpoint. Breyer and Darren, if you want to present some things to us, to the board, now would be a good time. And then we can ask questions or address.
So I'm not 100% sure how up to speed everyone is. Do you want me to kind of go through a history from our side, or are you guys aware of?
Well, I know that you prepared a thing that was titled Article 12 Protection Opportunity. I don't know, I got my copy, I think, when I was at the FinCom. Others may have, but anyways, whatever feel comfortable, if you want to go with the,
Okay.
Starting from the beginning?
Just a brief history. We were inherited the land off my father. He's looking to retire, so he's selling off stuff, and he gave us this piece of land. And, well, we'll get to that. But anyway, so we didn't really do much with it. We entertained putting some houses back here. It didn't go too far. We were approached a little over a year ago by someone looking to do a large-scale development on the land, 40B. And we thought before really entertaining the offer, we'd talk to the town first and see if they had any interest for well protection, because it is right up abutting against well 5 and the Meadowbrook aquifer there. So that's when the back and forth started with Jim and Bill, you and Glenn, and the land swap. And it was decided that it would be a lot easier to do an outright buy. And I know Jim had an appraisal done, which I guess we're not privy to. But we also are aware of the market value. In the meantime, another offer has come into us for significantly higher than we've proposed to the town. And then actually recently, within the last week, another proposal. So we're aware of the market value. I think I don't know if you guys know the statistics on this, but the state, their standard for it is like a acre can handle up to 20 units, and they allow 25,000 per unit for that. So on that piece of land, up to 60 units would be 1.5 million allowed for the land. The plan we showed you guys was like 30 to 40 units, which would be upwards of $1 million. And the offers we had were very similar to that. We would rather see the town have it for well protection and to keep abutters and neighbors happy and townspeople. But that's kind of where we're at. I know you guys had entertained or proposed a lower number. At the time, I don't think the figure had come in from Jim, so, which, yeah, we know it's gotta be over 400. I know that for sure.
I think the
So this is
appraised
below
value
market.
was, the parcel by itself as a landlocked parcel, I think was 40,000, And then I think 400 was the number that, with access, and I'm not sure whether,
Yeah, so it definitely has access. We have the front piece there, so access is not an issue, so it's a
but what we
buildable
would
piece,
be
it has
purchasing
access.
would not be the parcel that actually touches Darwin Lane though, right? I mean, that's not how we've seen it anyways.
Yeah, there's a 35-foot easement on the property.
And
the-
it's deeded, it's in the
Yeah, it's
deed.
deeded.
Yeah, but the parcel that we would be acquiring,
Has an easement, a
Across.
35-foot easement in the deed for
Right. To the
access,
back.
so it is
Okay.
accessible.
But,
It's not landlocked.
The other thing too, the 40,000 I think is an assessment. I don't think that's an appraised value. Because
no, the assessment is 32,300. The appraisal, because we specifically asked just the parcel, no access, just what would we be acquiring, as well as, because we understand with John having, I guess it's Darwin Lane 32, that abuts this piece, there would be access and might be included. I remember on the conceptual drawing of a 40B, either the road came in on that, or, but anyways, that was the
town
two items.
acquired, you'd have access, because you have the whole back side of the lot, so you'd have access if you did acquire it.
Okay.
But there's an easement at the front.
And that- it's not
Either way,
supposed to
there's
be a
access.
public
If the
document.
town buys it, they own the whole back lot line, so you definitely have access there, and there's an easement in the front.
Okay,
And I can't imagine that 3 acres in the Boston area with access would be appraised at that. I think what we've offered is probably below the appraised and definitely below the market value.
okay.
And just another thing to point out, we had got our hands on a study that the town of Walpole had hired IEP to do on the aquifer and land protection. And we gave you all a copy. As a result of this study, the following prioritized recommended for action to be taken to protect Walpole's groundwater resources along School Meadowbrook Road have been formulated. And number 1 was our parcel of land. Number 3 was the Jarvis Farm. The aquifer protection study had consisted of 2 major tasks: geological investigations to delineate and characterize the School Meadowbrook aquifer, and 2, the land use surveys designed. This whole purpose of the study was to perform a hydrogeologic investigation which would identify the use of land maps and location of physical characteristics, which provides the majority of Walpole's drinking water. So it was highly recommended in this to purchase this. And this, no one's ever brought up the study to the public. I mean, just as taxpayers, for what you paid per acre for Jarvis Farm, we're asking like $128,000 per acre less. I mean, we're considering this kind of as a gift, because even Jim said the other night the appraisers went up to $400,000, and there is access to the lot, and we're coming in under the assessed value. People think we're crazy, and maybe we are, and we have other options, but we felt socially responsible to do this first. And that's 6 wells you're protecting in that aquifer. I mean, I know it abuts 5, but that aquifer abuts this land too, and you're for $379,000, you own this forever. It's protected forever. Like,
Right.
I just look back as an RTM and this net of money we have spent in the past on different projects, this seems like extremely logical and realistic in over some of the other projects that money was spent on.
Anything else?
Unless you have any other questions.
Okay, all right.
I don't know if you want to hear from any neighbors or if they have any opinions.
No, I
on
think
this.
what first we'll just get some questions from the board, and then we'll give the audience a chance to weigh in. I did get an email from one of the people on Darwin Lane mentioning aquifer protection, but also talked about if it was developed, emergency access, traffic, and whatever. And the only thing I'd want is this board wouldn't be buying land, even though I certainly understand their concern. That would be something, if a development ever went, that they would want to go to the planning board. So we wouldn't be buying something because of those causes, and I'm not sure the DEP would allow us to use water revenue to acquire something that wasn't definitely related to or for a reason that wasn't aquifer protection or developing wells or something along like that. So, Patrick, we'll let you go first?
Okay. I remember when we had the study and our consultant said to purchase certain parcels of land for water protection. One was Jarvis Farm, another one was this piece of property. This is a piece of property that's, fairly important to water protection. I think we already have an encumbrance on it. Is that right, Bernie? So we have and the map looks like an arc, a piece of a pie that we take because it's so close to one of our wells.
To acquire the 400-foot radius, we actually had to acquire the part of the arc. We actually own this piece.
Okay.
This piece is on Washington Street 1300, where we have an easement because there's a house that sits 21
And
feet away.
that cuts into their property also.
Yeah,
right?
this is the part that,
So it is a kind of an important piece of land for the town to control. That being said, I don't know how much this is worth. I know the assessors say it's worth, what'd you say, $32,000?
32,300 is the assessed value.
And
And we have an appraisal of just that land was 40,000.
okay, right. All
Up
right.
to 400,000, Jim said the other night.
We asked them to do it two ways. One, just that parcel, and then as
With
it
no
exists-
access, but it has access.
Okay,
So that's
and-
incorrect.
And then with access, which it's not clear to me whether it included any part of Darwin Lane, number 32, which is a vacant lot at this point, so, go ahead.
Okay, and that vacant lot would provide access, is that what that's about?
Well,
Is that-
it's certainly, I understand there's a question as to whether there's access. You said that the utility easement does, but if that didn't exist, you would definitely need it to come from somewhere.
So
and-
there'd be two ways to have the access. If we maintain the land and we provide it to a developer, they're either gonna get an easement across our land or get the whole thing in the front.
Right.
If the town acquires it, you have access because you have the whole back of the lot abutting your land.
Oh, yeah.
So
If we
either way-
acquire it, we
either
don't
way
care.
there's
We don't
access.
interest in
Yeah, I'm
access.
just saying, either way there's access.
Right, okay.
So, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
I'm not interested in paying what they're offering. Okay, I think that seems excessive. I could be wrong, but I think it's excessive. But I think no matter how this falls out, if we don't buy it and we don't get it, we should think about, eminent domain, because it is an important parcel. And maybe in the end, we'll let the judge decide how much it's worth, and that'll be the end of it. So that's where I am in my thinking.
My only concern there, you have some offers that are,
Market value is way beyond.
is way,
the
and I
price-
think if
price.
we did go that route, and I understand we do have the ability to do it, I would think it would be hard pressed. I would think we'd pay more.
Yeah.
I'll
Well,
go,
we don't know that.
yeah.
That's why.
Anything else, Patrick?
That's it.
John?
I think it's a parcel that I'd really like to have, but I'm concerned about the price too. It's a
Okay.
lot higher than what I'd like to pay for it.
Yeah, so I don't have any questions. I've been following this issue right along, and I think I have a good grasp on the value of the land and the value of the land as for water protection. The value of the land in dollars is a much more difficult question to answer. How do you put a price on water protection? So, and I'm on the record in the past saying I support acquiring this 2.5 acres, give or take. Because of its proximity to well number 5. I think it's a good move for us to control this land and to protect it from possible contamination, to keep any sort of dense building from going up there. The impervious surfaces have a negative impact on our wells as well. And, I don't know if they're gonna build in 1 year or if the market conditions allow for it in 2 years or in 10 years or in 20 years, but if we own it, we keep it from being built in perpetuity. And I like that idea. I like being in control of something that can impact our wells. So I'm on the record being in support of acquiring the land. because protecting our water is one of the reasons why I'm here, why I ran to be a commissioner. But I'm also here to keep the water affordable, so we can't just spend any ungodly amounts of money to acquire land that we like just because we like it. We have to spend the right amount of money. So we're on the record of saying that, and I think this is public, that we've offered them $150,000, which is well below what they're asking. And I'm open to improving upon that number. I don't know if I would need a majority of the commission to agree with me, but I'll just put on the record that I'm willing to increase that number. Maybe exactly what I'm willing to increase it to could be discussed in executive session, but I don't know if there's any other interest in improving upon that. So I'll just leave it at that.
I think we'd all like to have the land. In fact, when we first met with you, I said we'd be happy to take it for free. And understandably, you said no. And the cost is an issue with me. I guess what I'm looking at is how much protection we'd be gaining. And as Glenn mentioned, it's not something, it's hard to put a dollar amount on that. What I was looking at is there's 3 houses on Washington Street that are very close. They exist. They've already been there for 30 years or more. There's certainly at the end of Darwin Lane, we've got houses that are at least one house that's, I think, within about 300 feet of the Zone 1. There's either 1 or 2 homes at the end of Eleanor Road that's within like about 300 feet of Zone 1. So this is really the only well that has, that isn't out in the middle of town forest my concern is for the price, and it's really hard. I'm not sure whether it's worth $150,000, $200,000, or $40,000, but
Well, it could be worth up to 1.5.
Yes, right, I understand. So
I just want to say for the record, too, that in the summary and recommendations of this aquifer study report that the town of Walpole's taxpayers paid for, part of the recommendations to purchase this was to assess an existing possible potential for groundwater contamination in the area shown to be critical for aquifer protection. And our lot is number 1. Jarvis Farm was number 3 that you purchased. Just so this is on the record for
Right.
townspeople.
We're all familiar with that.
yeah.
You paid a lot of money for Jarvis
What
Farm.
you paid for Jarvis Farm.
Yes, we did, and one of the differences, that was key for Washington well number 6, which is our biggest well. It produces almost 4 times as much as Washington 5. And we also, when we were initially, I think all of us have walked the site, and one of them, Jarvis Farm is basically flat, and it'll be an interesting effort to build, and I don't doubt that if somebody's offering the money, they've looked at it and decide, yes, they can build on it, but.
One of the reasons maybe that it's number 1 is because the shape of it, and the way it does contour, it directs everything directly down
Right.
the aquifer, and not just well number 5, the
So,
whole area.
okay, do you have anything else you wish to add? And then I'll ask if there were any of the,
I would just also say, the other parts, as you mentioned, the houses on Washington Street,
Yeah.
Darwin, none of those were on the list of recommendations to purchase.
no, there's a difference in being able to buy vacant land as opposed to something that actually has a house. At 1300, we had to acquire, just so we could put the well online, a very restrictive easement that actually goes about 20 to 25 feet from their house, where they can, I believe, play on it. The kids can play it, but can't put a swing set on it, or can't trim trees, or it's very, very restrictive, no fertilizer or whatever, so. Anything else before we get some comments from neighbors? Any, if you would like to comment, if you could just state your name and address for the record. If not?
Sure.
Yes. Would you? Yeah, this is your opportunity to be a TV star.
David Vlasic, I'm at 31 Darwin Lane, which is the
Last
home
house.
at the end of the cul-de-sac. So, I mean, I don't care what you pay for the lot. That's not really what I'm here for. Our concerns, obviously, is if, this threat of 40B has happened many times over the years since we've lived there. And while we don't want a 40B development to happen there, I think the biggest issue that we've really come to talk about, often amongst neighbors is if there ever was something there, we are concerned about the contamination, certainly from a large parcel or something like that being built down there, and then obviously ultimately into our water. So that's our largest concern. Whether or not we can't sit here and tell the town what to do in terms of money. Pay for it, I guess. Whatever. We pay our sewer bills. We pay our taxes. It is what it is. So we're all for you buying it, and again, it's really just for the protection of our area. So.
Okay,
That's it.
thank you.
I assume you have spoken to, you said you mentioned your neighbors. How many neighbors have you spoken to? They're not here, but in support of this?
Yeah,
Most of them
we
are-
were at the FinCom meeting last.
Looked like there might have been 6 or 8.
Yeah, so we had the majority of
Yeah.
folks there,
Yeah.
and so we've been in touch with each other and stuff. But ultimately, we're right at the end of the cul-de-sac,
Right.
And that is our land at the end there, and we are the biggest puzzle with all bees.
Right.
And like I said, this is not the first time we've dealt with something like this with this particular piece of property, and obviously we want to keep our house intact and keep our lot the way it is and have good drinking water.
Yeah.
And that's, as you mentioned, and Darren mentioned, it's pretty steep over there,
Right.
and all that water goes right down there.
Right.
If you put in impervious surface over there, it's going to be a problem. Not that I'm saying that could ever happen. I know that 40B, one of the things that they look at is impervious surfaces, and one of the ways it gets rejected, right, is through water contamination, et cetera, right? Those are one of the caveats of, not pushing through a 40B project, right?
Well, I'm not 100% not being on the planning board, but
Right.
the advantage of a 40B is a lot of the town zoning requirements are out of the, go out of the window. You don't have
Right.
to,
But they wouldn't
setbacks and
let
things
anybody
like that.
Contaminate water, potential
Yeah,
contamination
no, I
of
think
water.
that would be, if there was a development, we would say
Yeah.
we would want
It would be
protections.
unintentional contamination, which
Right.
is always a possibility.
Right,
Yeah.
but that's studied, correct,
Yeah.
beforehand?
Yes, it is.
And it can certainly be argued to
Right.
the zoning board.
Yeah,
Right.
if we got to that
Right.
point.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
so, thank you.
okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Joe?
I just have one quick question. Glenn mentioned the $150,000 figure. I'm assuming that's the average of the 3 figures. Is that how you came up with 150?
How we came up with 150, I don't know that I can speak for everybody, but that was, I was willing to go higher, and some people were not willing to go above that number, and so we were left at 150 was the highest we could get 3 commissioners to agree to.
This was the guidance we
It
gave.
just happens to be the average of the 379, the 39, and the 32.
Oh.
I think it's a coincidence.
At the time, I don't think we knew the other
Yeah.
numbers.
coincidence.
It was looking, it was clear that the Hassenjagers were, they started, at their final offer was at 380,000. And we said, well, let's make a counter offer of, and as Glenn mentioned, it seemed that that might even be higher than a majority of the board would go, to see, would we be able to come closer? And, I understand, certainly with the office, that the other's office, that, when it went down just by 1,000, it seemed clear to me that we're at a point where we're not getting any closer. So,
One other follow-up.
yes.
In actuality, because we have block rates, those who are the highest water users in town would be paying for the purchase of this land.
I'm not sure. We don't allocate based on,
Well,
everybody would have a share,
It
let's
would
put
be
it that way.
borrowing over 10
it
or
would be
20
a
years.
share,
Yeah.
but the more water you use,
That's-
the more you pay towards the purchase of this property.
Good point. That would be a good point, yes. Anything else? I'll entertain a motion. I'll make a motion that we act for favorable action, so we have something for discussion. Is there a second?
Say that again?
They're offering at $379, and that is what the article states, or I'm not sure, does it state a dollar amount? No, okay, but that is the price that it would be. I'll just make a motion that, so that we can either say yes or no,
Okay.
based on
All
what
right.
they're, and Glenn, you look.
Well,
puzzled.
I'd like to make a motion
I'll
that we.
wait for,
I mean, a second, could we have two motions on the table at the same time?
no, we'll take
cannot?
one. No,
All right.
I'll
Well,
withdraw mine since,
I mean, I'll make a motion that we.
no, I've withdrawn my attempt to start a motion, so.
Okay.
My motion would be that we reiterate our $150,000 offer, and that would be the favorable action for $150,000. I don't know, I mean, they've said no in negotiations with the town administrator, but I don't know that they would say no now. I mean, they could probably just say no now, but that's my motion. I mean, I don't think we're gonna get favorable action on 379, so
All right.
I don't see a point in.
All right, well, for discussion, I'll say, second that.
Okay.
Is there any further discussion on an offer for $150,000? There being none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed?
Aye.
All right, so we have a no vote on the
All right, so that's not even on the
article.
table.
So a two to two doesn't pass, so. All right, thank you. We have one other item left, and that is our Article 18. This is Mr. Maraski's article. He's already spoken to this at length at our previous meeting. Certainly, I think we've all seen the information from the, yes, if we get John back in, from the town administrator that was, I guess, town council's opinion, which I understand, Joe, you are questioning it, but,
Right, so you should have seen town council's opinion.
yes.
Then you should have seen a summary of what I said at the finance committee meeting. And then you should have seen town council's counter to a summary of what I said at the finance.
Maybe you could bring us what came out of the finance committee from your counter, and that, if,
That's gonna take a while.
all right, maybe, I guess what it comes down,
Basically, what I did was summarize the Mass General laws.
Right.
And the charter sections.
Okay.
That give town meeting the power to create bylaws and to do
Right.
what's in this article. Town meeting, town council cited a section of Mass General laws which basically allows the Board of Selectmen to enter into an intermunicipal agreement. Where I am now is the Finance Committee voted to remand my article back to me.
right,
Because I'm still in the middle of researching with a representative of the legislature, the Mass General laws that was cited by town council. So if you wouldn't mind, I would recommend that you just remand
Yeah.
it back to me. If for some reason that it is illegal, and at this point in time, I'm not convinced that it's illegal, but if at some point in time, even after town meeting, it's determined that it's illegal, then remanding it back, it'll just go away and die on its own.
Yeah, at the FinCom meeting, it was mentioned that seemed to be the way they were leaning. If we say our thought is no action, it really doesn't make anything because it will be the FinCom's motion. One of the things that, I'll get you right next,
Well,
was the town charter saying that we have exclusive, this board has exclusive charge and control. So my question would be, would we need to change the town charter? So anyways, let me go to Mr. Spillane.
Joe, I appreciate where you're coming from. I don't want town meeting involved in saying who we can sell water to. We have experts here that are much better at it than what town meetings people would be. What do they know about
Well,
that
it
type
would
of
be
thing?
the same same thing as.
It's just another hurdle for us.
You have experts who provide you with a variety of opinions about all sorts of things. However, you still need town meeting's approval to implement what they want. We have to remember, and this was my point at the Finance Committee, we have to remember that we are a town meeting form of government. And oftentimes, no disrespect, boards, committees, and commissions believe that we're a town council form of government, or that we're a town manager form of government.
Do you think 150 people at town meeting are gonna know more about water than what we know?
They usually, the same thing applies to all your other articles. You know, if that was the case, then why allow them to comment on your budget? Why allow town meeting to comment about your capital budget?
You know, I've said for years, even FinCom, I mean, they do a great job, don't get me wrong. I don't think they should be going over articles that have nothing to do with money. Why are they the experts?
It's dropped in our lap.
I know it is, but I don't think it's right. I never thought it was right, you
Well,
know?
we know what would happen in a hypothetical. We know what you gentlemen would be doing. I think a little bit of Joe's article is for the future. We know what you men in general would do. You're conservative on a lot of this stuff. But you don't know 10 years from now, if you are not on the board, who's going to be on the board.
Well, that's the point that I was just going to
10
bring
years
up.
from now, I won't be.
One of the things
Here
that,
either.
I just want to make sure that people understand that this board is not interested in selling water to developments outside the town. And the Applebee's example is they came to us and said, we want to build this hotel in the Shotzel and Sharon. We said no. And it's only when they became part into Walpole that we said okay, and there was other negotiations. We do have, as you brought up, Joe, last week, there are 24 existing customers that are outside of Walpole. With the exception of one or two, they're all decades old, you know, and I'm talking multiple, you know, in long time ago. And one of the things that has changed is particularly with our new water withdrawal permit coming up that's going to basically say, this is what you need, not what you can pump. We have even more, whether it's us or another board coming along later, would have the same constraints. The other thing is, even if we, this board said, yes, we want to sell it to whomever, you know, one of the surrounding towns for some development, it would require an intermunicipal agreement, and so you have another board, that has to be signed by the selectmen. So it's not only would this board have to change, but so would the other. And because the charter says exclusive charge and control, and I understand where you're coming from, we're in agreement. We don't want to sell water outside.
My view
I'll
on
get
this
you right
is
next to
that
it.
water is going to become an issue of the haves and the have-nots. And just recently, I read or was told that Plainville asked North Attleboro for water. So I think that this is going to start to become something of an issue going down the line, and that people are going to be looking at development and how much development that they can get. They need that growth money, and without water, there's no growth.
Right. Patrick, and then
Just a couple
Bernie
of points.
is mumbling.
You know, under Massachusetts law in the beginning, when these elected boards were set up, the reason they are set up is to protect the people's money. I mean, we really make policy and we watch the money. That's our real job. We also can establish fountains and a few other little things like that. Okay, now, we try to provide the people of Walpole with the best water we can at the cheapest price. Now, when we sell water, for instance, let me give you an example. The Lexus dealership up on Route 1. Well, they have their own irrigation. Wells and Sharon, they irrigate their lawn. They wash their cars with recycled water. Why would they want Walpole water? The reason is we have industrial water. They don't want the water for drinking, really. They want the water for fire protection. Because if they don't have industrial water that they can use for fire suppression, they can't get a mortgage on their property and they can't build their building. So when we say we're giving them water, we're giving them really access to the water. Now, there's other places you may not realize, we're mandated by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to supply water to some towns. We're mandated. And you know that up in Dover. So the thing is, we got, by the way, for the Lexus dealership, $1.165 or something $million. And at Funway, we also got,
And
I
Chambers
don't know the
pays a
exact
higher
amount,
rate, Patrick,
but it was a
too.
chunk of money also. So that money defrays the water bills. Now, if they want us, if town meeting wants us not to do that, they have to understand that it's going to be a loss.
This bylaw doesn't indicate anything that's already happened. All, what has already happened has been grandfathered. This bylaw is going forward. It has nothing to do with Funway, it has nothing to do with the houses that are in Dover. It has
And Norfolk
nothing to do with Bird Chambers. That's all grandfathered.
So it doesn't
Right.
have anything to do with Plainville either.
Well, one of the
Wait,
things,
I'm not
go
done.
ahead,
I have another
go ahead.
point.
Using
Right,
Plainville and
right.
Norfolk.
I didn't
He's got-
finish.
But that's not, it's not the same, it's not the same, you shouldn't be able to use that. They're two different circumstances. Plainville's circumstance is because of Plainville's infrastructure, and Plainville's lack of infrastructure. It has not, it's Walpole is in a total different situation than Plainville.
Well, the situation of the Sharon Motel was a lack of infrastructure. There was no infrastructure for Sharon to supply the hotel with their own water.
That's,
But
That's
we,
what I'm saying. What I'm concerned about is what might happen down the road. And when that happens, then the implications
can I finish?
are going to be
Yeah.
tremendous.
Patrick,
It's kind of convoluted too, and the point is, right next to Lexus, there is vacant land, as you can see. They came before us years ago, offered us $2 million if we would supply them with the water and the sewer. And the commissioner said no. There's been many times when we say no, we can't do it because it would impact our town. Let's say that we were prohibited from providing water. Sharon, the town that's closest to us, would finally build the water mains their own and would have no control whatsoever. Right now, we have a little bit of control because we can say, yes, we can supply water to a dealership that doesn't use really water. And we can say no to, what was it, how many thousand, wasn't it like 600 units in that 40B in Sharon? We can say no to them. But if we didn't have that, they would probably bring in a line because they'd have enough people to make it economically feasible. Do you understand what I'm saying?
The bottom line here is, I don't think that by the time we get to town meeting, that the research that is being done by some other people on my behalf is going to be accomplished. So I would respectfully ask that you remand it back to me. If for some reason those other people say, Joe, you're barking up the wrong tree, it'll all go away by itself automatically. Remanding back an article to a petitioner is something I used to make a motion for when I was on finance committee for about a decade. And I would always make that motion, especially to a private petitioner. It's a polite way of saying no.
No problem.
Yes.
Yeah,
And-
I would agree with that.
yeah, I'll make a motion to that effect in just 1 second. I wasn't on the board at the time when the Lexus dealer, so I don't know all the details, other than I can see that there was a lot of money. The only thing that I would think at this point, given what our water withdrawal permit is, I can't see this board saying yes to any outside water, because we're that close, and if you just have to go downtown, you can see, that there are a lot of potential new developments, and there's gonna be 40Bs where you don't have any choice, you gotta take them. So, with that, and I know one particular person's dying to make a motion to adjourn, I'll make a motion that we recommend refer back to committee, and that I'll just add that we have a concern about the charter stating that the Board of Sewer and Water Commissioners has exclusive charge and control over the water department and the system. So is there a second to that?
Yes.
Okay.
Pat has it.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Motion adjourned?
Yes, hold on, wait a minute.
Two opposed?
Yes, Rick?
Mr. Chairman, I don't believe you've actually taken a position on Article 12.
We did. We took a vote, and there was no, it was 2-2 for none. And the position was, the motion was for,
So are you going to recommend to the Finance Committee that there be no action on Article 12?
I'll make a motion just to clear it up, that based on our earlier vote, that I make a motion that we recommend to the Finance Committee that for Article 12, that the motion be for no action. Is there a second? We have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
All right, 3-1-0. No, 3-1-0. I was thinking, wait a minute, I'm not up to 5. But
Motion adjourned?
yes, so we have, okay, we have a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
To adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.